Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and today we have a very special guest who I'm excited about speaking with. I've been wanting to spend some time with her for quite a while. Her name is Dr. Rosita Arvigo. Welcome, Rosita.
Thank you. Hi, Ken. Hi, everybody.
In the broadest sense of the word on this call, we're going to talk about plants. And you might ask, plants? House plants? Plants in the garden? Well, maybe some of those, but plants, again, in the broadest sense of the term, we don't typically think about it much, but as human beings, we're entirely dependent on plants. Obviously for our food, either directly or indirectly, for our clothes if we wear cotton, for our houses if our houses have wood in them. If we breathe oxygen, I think we all do, we need plants for that. Many of our so-called modern medicines come from plants, directly from them. And there's just so many ways that plants affect our lives. We really would not be able to exist without them. And so the question is, how much do we know about these beings, these plants that share the earth with us and make our existence possible? And the answer is we know some stuff, but we certainly don't know everything. And here's the point of this call. A lot of the knowledge around the world about plants and their nature and their uses is being lost, unfortunately, at a rapid rate. And we're going to be talking about that on this call, and we're going to be talking about the very interesting work that Rosita is doing to help stem that loss and turn it around to the positive side. But before we go forward, Rosita, I wonder if you would give your two web addresses, because I'm certain that people that find this call interesting are going to want to follow up and learn more, because we certainly can't cover your life and work in 1 hour. It'll never happen. So could you tell us your two websites and the spellings too?
Sure. The first is www.arvigo, A-R-V-I-G-O, therapy.com. The other is Rosita, R-O-S-I-T for Tom, A-R-V as in Victor, I-G-O.com. So one is a personal website, one is a professional website.
Great, and we'll repeat those probably another time during the call and certainly at the end. Rosita, I'm going to give you a really abbreviated version of your life story, and then we're going to focus on your work in Belize and the things that you've done there. You're originally from Chicago, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then from a talk that I heard you give at the New York Botanical Garden, I know that during the Vietnam War, you and your husband at the time went to Mexico and kind of lived almost, maybe not almost, but like homesteaders in Mexico. Is that more or less correct?
Yeah, that is very correct, and it was just like jungle homesteaders, yes.
Wow. And is that where you got your first exposure to plant knowledge of other cultures?
Yes, I would say that was true. I've always considered myself a lover of plants ever since early childhood, but like others, I never thought too much about their healing properties. And in Mexico, I was able to spend a great deal of intimate time with traditional healers there in the mountains of Guerrero, where Acapulco is situated.
And then after that period, I believe you went back to Chicago and got some additional academic and professional training.
Right. I had spent 7 years in Mexico. Then I went back to Chicago to become a doctor of naturopathy, which is an offshoot of chiropractic from 1907. And then from there on to Belize in Central America, a small Caribbean, Central American nation on the Caribbean Sea, and I've been living there ever since 1982, and still live there. Mm-hmm.
And one of your first projects there, I believe, if I remember from your biography, was to attempt to be a farming family.
Yes, we more than attempted. We accomplished.
You did it. Okay.
Yeah. We purchased 32 acres of raw, uncleared jungle and went to Belize with our daughter, who had been born in Belize, but by the time we returned after getting degrees and bought this piece of land, she was already about 5. And so we bought these 30 acres of uncleared jungle, and over the next 30 years spent all of our time and energy clearing the land, building houses, and creating a lovely tropical homestead that eventually became an attraction to schools and tourists because of our rainforest medicine trail that featured about 50 different edible, useful, and medicinal plants growing wild in the forest behind our house.
And so when you got to Belize and went through the considerable efforts and labor of carving out a homestead and farm and home in the jungle there, you again encountered people with very advanced knowledge of the plants there and their uses.
Right. I had every intention of starting an alternative medicine practice in Belize. And one of the reasons we chose to live in Belize is because there were no government laws restricting alternative or natural therapies. So, of course, I needed very much to find someone who could teach me, instruct me about the medicinal plants of my newly adopted home. And I heard from many different people the names of several healers, and nothing seemed to click until I heard the name of Eliseo Ponte of San Antonio Village. Everyone said, oh, he's the best, he's number one, he's the most authentic one, but watch out for him, he's a strange one. He delves with the dark arts, and he's a lecher, and absolutely none of those things proved to be true.
So then you approached him over time to learn from him, to become a student. Can you talk a little bit about that process and then also the experience of being his student and the kinds of things that you learned from him?
All right. Well, it took a full year to gain his confidence, and I thought that was reasonable and just. When you take on an apprentice, it's kind of like adopting a child, so you need to be sure that this person has sincerity and integrity. So I went to visit him every single week for one full day for a full year. I helped out, I swept his yard, I always gave him naturopathic treatments, I took care of him when he was ill, and I translated for his patients, I collected firewood, basically it was chop wood, carry water for a full year. And then exactly almost to the day after a year, I arrived at his doorstep very early in the morning at dawn, and he gave me a rather frustrating look like, oh, she's here again. And I thought, well, this is the end. If he doesn't agree to teach me, I had been asking him several times if he would teach me about the medicinal plants and healing, and he said no, he didn't have time and he wasn't interested in teaching a gringa. He said a gringa has to go home. It's only natural that a foreign person would go home someday and everything that I teach you would be lost up there in Gringolandia, as he called it. So on this last day, I said, well, today I'm never coming back again, but I said, let's go, I'll help you harvest your corn. He said, what do you know about harvesting corn? He was standing on his doorstep with his basket on his forehead and his collection tools about to go harvest corn. And I said, well, you know, I lived in Mexico 7 years. I know how to harvest corn. So off we went. We walked 90 minutes to get to his cornfield, and I was absolutely astounded. Don Alicio was 87, 88 years old at the time, and when I saw his cornfield, it was a mountain, a very big hillside, small mountain that he had cleared by himself and planted, cultivated, and was now going to harvest by himself, carrying back thousands of ears of corn little by little in a little basket hung from his head. So I helped him harvest corn, and I was throwing in corn cobs as fast as he was and piling up the bundles as fast as he. And we met in the middle of a row of corn, and he stopped and he looked at me, perspiring as much as he was, and he said, are you married? And I said, yes, I'm married, and I have 3 children. And his response was, oh. So that morning at the top of the hillside, sharing an orange that I had brought along, he looked down at me and he said, what is it that you want? And I said, Don Alicio, if you teach me, if you take me on as your student and teach me about the medicinal plants, I promise to be no bother and to work hard and do everything you say. And that was the beginning. And so that was the first day coming home, carrying his corn. that he started to teach me about the plants, the vines, roots, and barks, and leaves, and flowers of Central America, specifically Belize. Then I had finally a 13-year apprenticeship with him. And during that time, he taught me aspects of Maya medicine, the two of which impressed me the most, that have stayed with me the longest, are the Maya spiritual healing and the abdominal therapy, specifically for women's uterine ailments.
And I know that is what people can learn more about on the arvigotherapy.com website. You have quite a ambitious training organization, and people all over the U.S. and probably other countries are learning some of the things that you learned in Belize.
Right. It's my quest to bring this knowledge of the abdominal therapy to women around the world. We now have practitioners in Israel, Greece, in Australia, in Japan. We're moving around the world because only women know how women suffer with menstrual problems and uterine prolapse and ovarian conditions. And Don Alicio's magnificent ancient massage is the very best hope that women have of achieving complete normalcy of reproductive function. So I'm very excited about the many women we've been able to help and the many babies who have come through with women who previously had fertility challenges. So yes, I'm very excited about the trainings.
And that, again, that's at arvigotherapy.com. And this, as far as you know, is a Mayan science that your teacher learned and has transmitted to you.
Right. The ancient Maya were known to be very eclectic, very complete healers, village doctors. They did different types of sophisticated massage and folk chiropractic. Don Alicio taught me a system of Maya acupuncture using stingray spines. He had a system very similar to the Chinese cupping, with a glass to move up and down parts of the body where you have muscle spasm, much like the Chinese do. And then the Maya prayers were very important, herbal baths and herbal teas and salves and ointments and wound powders, very, very complicated and sophisticated medical system that, as far as we know, goes back about 5,000 years to the ancient Maya.
Well, and of course we know that the civilization part of the Maya culture disintegrated the cities and the big public works and all the things that made it what we call a civilization. But the knowledge was retained by people on the ground.
Right. I mean, I always like to say the Maya people survived quite well without the temples and the nobles and the sacrifices, but they could not have survived without knowledge of medicinal plants and their traditional healing systems, and because a lot of it was in the hands of commoners like grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles and women healers. So that was one aspect of ancient Maya civilization that has trickled down through the ages. I'm sure it's not as complete as it was 5,000 years ago, but we do know that aspects of it are still with us in modern times because of people like Don Alicio Panti.
And in addition to him, you found other people with great expertise as well.
Yes, over the years, because of the Belize Ethnobotany Project, which we conducted with the New York Botanical Garden to record the traditional healing systems of Belize, we were able to work with nearly 24 different, very sophisticated, quite famous traditional healers still alive in Belize at that time during the 1980s and 1990s. So the one that stands out the most is Miss Hortense Robinson, a herbal midwife who was of a typical Belizean Creole Maya descent. She had a grandfather who was an escaped American slave. She had a grandfather who was a Scotsman. So in typical Belize terms, they call her a boil-up. She's a big old mix-up of a lot of different cultures and races. And so she, as the herbal midwife, was probably the most famous woman in Belize. and she was I was able to share 10 years of her life with her, and she, like Donna Lucio, was very generous and of spirit and very excited to share their knowledge, that it would never come to an end, that the torch of knowledge would carry on into many future generations. Neither Donna Lucio nor Miss Hortense and many of the other healers I knew ever went to school and never learned to read and write. So their knowledge was retained by their brilliant genius minds, and I was able to, over all those decades, to do my very best at recording and archiving the names of the plants they used, their indications, contraindications, stories and myths, and any dangers involved in the plant, and how to apply them in physical and spiritual healing as well. By the time we finished the Belize Ethnobotany Project, we had recorded about nearly 3,000 plants.
And that was organized by the New York Botanical Garden.
Yes, that's correct. Dr. Michael Balick was the principal investigator on that project that ran from 1987 to 1996 with the New York Botanical Garden, and USAID was the primary funder.
And you've got a new book. You have many books out, but your newest book related to this. Tell us the title, if you would.
Yeah, it's my first, well, there are two new books out. The first novel I ever wrote is called The Oracle of Ixchel. It's a historical novel set in the 7th century of Yucatan in Mexico, and it's about ancient women Maya healers and the island of Cozumel, where the goddess of medicine Ixchel has her sanctuary. The other book with the New York Botanical Gardens is called Messages from the Gods, a guide to the useful plants of Belize. And that is the long-promised book that Dr. Balick and I worked on for 27 years as a means of a total recording and archiving of all of the knowledge that the traditional healers shared from us over the 9 years of the Ethnobotany Project. But it was a 27-year effort to finally bring it to fruition and publication. And they're both available on Amazon.
And that second book is Messages of the Gods?
Messages from the Gods.
From the Gods.
Yeah, a guide to the useful plants of Belize. Dr. Balick decided to call it Messages from the Gods because most of the information that the traditional healers shared with us, they said, came through dream visions from the Maya spirits. So that's why we gave it that name, because it truly was Messages from Gods.
This is so interesting because wherever anybody studies indigenous cultures or traditional cultures that have ancient roots, this is a very common theme, that the technical information that they're using, which is very sophisticated, whether it's plant medicine or whether it's something as seemingly mundane as how the proper way to build a canoe, this information comes to them in dreams. It's intriguing. It's a different part of human experience, but it's very common. You find this in Africa, you find this in Asia, you find it in North America, and then you found it in Belize as well. Now you have another book that I would say is a little more. It's like a more popular orientation called Rainforest Remedies, which is another way for people to access your work and some of your research. But I do have Messages from the Gods. I went to the New York Botanical Garden when you spoke, and I made sure that I got my own copy. It's for anybody interested in healing, in plant medicine, in ethnobotany, in anthropology, or in just appreciating the richness of human knowledge. It's a magnificent book. I mean, it is really it'll keep you busy for a long time, maybe the rest of your life. Hey, let's talk about something. One of the several things that you did that I want to focus on a little bit, which is you organized conferences that allowed and created opportunities for traditional healers to come together and also people interested in traditional healing to come together in beliefs. I just find that so fascinating. And sometimes some of the healers were meeting each other for the first time in this context. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I will. We were able to organize 9 different traditional healers conferences over the years, and the one that stands out the most was the first. Our theme was, if you know, come and teach. If you've always wanted to know, come and learn. So it was addressing the traditional healers as colleagues and fellows in this effort to preserve traditional knowledge. And the first seminar had 300 people attended from all around the country. And I think the greatest moment was the first moment when we all stood in that conference hall and looked around and realized that there are 300 traditional healers sitting in this room right now. And who knew? Who knew that there were so many dedicated souls within this nation of a pretty small population of only about 300,000 people? And we could imagine how many more were not able to make it. So we got a grant from USAID, and so we were able to pay their bus fare, train fare, no trains, I'm sorry, bus fare, and also hotels and food, and then some daily stipend for the privilege of having them come to share with us. And the object was to get them to, everyone had to bring their favorite plant and simply stand up in front of their colleagues and give us the names of the plant. And in Belize, we might have 7 or 8 different names for one plant because there are so many distinct and unique cultures within the country. So give us the names of the plant, how you use it, why is it your favorite, how do you prepare it, can you grow it at home, what are the indications for cultivation. And so people just found it utterly fascinating. The conference lasted 3 days, and when everyone parted, many, many new lifetime friends had been made, and I think that it was a very important shot in the arm for traditional healing, and many people brought their grandchildren with them. So we were pleased that the grandchildren and children were also able to participate and to realize how revered their grandparents were.
And so, and this is, again, this is just the tip of the iceberg of one pretty small country. And so we could imagine that every country, that still retains some of its old ways has its legions of experts on plants and plant medicine. So this was a great model. Do you have other people taken up this model and used it in their countries?
Not, I haven't heard, not that I know of. For the last 16 years, we have put more effort into children. We have been conducting summer bush medicine camps for children, and our 16th just finished 2 days ago. So every summer we invite 20, sometimes 24 children to spend 2 weeks with traditional healers, learning about bush medicine, learning about spiritual healing, and then how to do a foot massage, how to do a neck massage, how to treat earaches with plants, and to give herbal baths and treat diaper rash and sunburns. It's basically common household remedies for common household ailments. And I have to say the children take to it like ducks to water. We are always amazed at how sincerely children really want to help each other and to be of service within the household. So by now, after 16 years, there have been about 500, 600 children come through our summer bush medicine camp. With the traditional healers conferences, we were able to have 9 of them. And I don't know that anyone has continued that tradition in other countries, but it certainly would be wonderful. I know that they exist in Guatemala. There are some in Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. So I believe that there are people around the world who are conducting those type of conferences and making sincere efforts to capture traditional healing knowledge before the lamp is extinguished. The problem is most of the traditional healers are elders, and not many young people really want to follow in their footsteps. There will always be some, but there are not as many as there once were, because of higher education, and people seek better paying jobs, and traditional healers generally work only by voluntary gift without any specific fees. So I think at any time, even in ancient days, there were a chosen few who would be willing to make that type of a lifetime sacrifice. And again, another chosen few on top of those who would be able to serve as Don Alicio and Miss Hortense Robinson did as the Hemen, or it's the word in Maya for shaman, which simply translates as he or she who knows. So, as I say, in the best of times, there were not many people willing to make that type of a sacrifice. And in modern days, we find that there are almost none.
So this enterprise of bringing healers together, giving them opportunities to teach, introducing the younger generation to this science and this art becomes more and more important.
Yes, and that's the purpose of the Bush Medicine Camp. We hope that we are able to inspire children to think about the healing profession as a way of life, whether it be as a bush doctor, a traditional healer, a midwife, a herbalist, a massage therapist, or a medical doctor or a pharmacist. And many of the children who come through Bush Medicine Camp do indeed decide to follow through with the career, perhaps in ethnobotany or botany or one of the healing professions. So we feel very pleased and very proud about that.
And then another initiative that you're involved in and helped lead was the creation of I'm going to get the technical word wrong, but a biomedical preserve. Is that the right? No, it's not quite right.
Yeah, it was ethnol reserve. So basically, it's a medicinal plant reserve. That's probably the easiest way. It was called Terra Nova Medicinal Plant Reserve. It was in central West Belize. The government at the time had originally awarded the Traditional Healers Association, which I founded in 1984, 6,000 acres of raw, uncleared jungle as a repository for plants and trees that were already scheduled for destruction in areas of the rainforest about to be cleared for industry or cattle or citrus farming. So our goal was to have young people dig up the trees, the vines, and the roots that were valuable for medicine and transplant them to the medicinal plant reserve known as Terra Nova. But as many good projects go by the wayside, this one was eventually rescinded by the government that came in after the government that gave us that piece of land. So unfortunately, sad to report, Terra Nova was a fabulous pilot project, but in Belize it no longer exists. There is one based on that model in Thailand. One of the princesses of Thailand is a PhD in ethnobotany, and she was very moved by that project and started a similar one in Thailand. There is another ethnomedicine reserve in Peru based also on this pilot project in Belize. So all was not lost, and we certainly proved that it could be a good model to have troubled youth without much of a future help the rainforest that sometimes doesn't have much of a future either. So we thought it was a very successful project and could have continued, but like many projects, politics got in our way.
You mentioned in your talk at the New York Botanical Garden that some people did some arithmetic and calculated that a undestroyed forest is actually worth, I think it was nearly 10 times, had 10 times the dollar value of a clear-cut forest. Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. That project was to value a piece of standing, undisturbed rainforest compared to the same size plot that would have been cleared. So what would be the value of the corn and beans and pumpkins that would grow on this plot of land compared to the value of medicinal plants that could be sustainably harvested and sold on the open market. And in Belize, there is a very thriving open market for medicinal plants because most people still use herbal home remedies. So the plot for corn and beans had a value of just under $400, and the same plot of land, undisturbed, uncleared, when sustainably harvested in medicinal plants, had a value of over $3,000.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Let's talk about the plants and their efficacy now. I know in tropical regions there's all kinds of pretty serious ailments, funguses, fungal infections, and infections of all kinds, bug and other critter bites. It's a place where it's easy to get sick, and not so easy to get cured sometimes, especially if you're using modern allopathic means. Can you talk just about it, maybe just a few? Obviously, there's no way to go into the depth of this, but just to give our listeners an indication of the effectiveness of some of these treatments.
Right. Well, I guess our very favorites were those kind of jungle-born ailments that you just mentioned would be a magnificent herb. It's a shrubby kind of a herb. It's called jackass bitters or golden bitters, tres puntas, alligator's paw, cayabin. Like many famous and effective plants, it has many common names because different cultures remembered it, passed it on from generation to generation, not because it didn't work, because it does indeed work. So we use it for parasites. We use it as an antimicrobial, as an antifungal, an anti-malarial, an antibacterial, antiviral. It's our most important remedy, and it's the one that we as jungle dwellers take every single day to prevent some of those ailments that you just mentioned, intestinal parasites, malaria, as well as skin fungus or internal fungus like candida. So we make it into a tincture. It's very, very bitter. They call it jackass bitters because it's so bitter you have to be a jackass to drink it, the Creole people say. So it's an extremely bitter plant, but John Alicio would say bitter cures, sweet doesn't cure. So we take that daily, and we have it in a formula called Traveler's Tonic. It's in a formula Immune Boost. Are we still on?
We are. We're still there. We just had one technical glitch, but I'm still here, yeah.
All right, so it's in a formula called Immune Boost. It's in our female tonic, so it's our most often used remedy. The Latin name is Neurolena lobata. There are excellent plants for, one of the most useful is the polyredhead or Hamelia patens. One of its common names is a cure-all, literally cure-all it's called, but the cure-all is to skin condition, itching, biting insects, and it draws out the acid that the bug emits and clears up the burning right away. So yeah, the jungle is replete with vectors and insects. We have remedies.
Oh, you dropped out. Oh, that's too bad. I'm just going to keep talking. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you fine, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Yeah, and I believe you mentioned it in your lecture at the New York Botanical Garden that pretty much every ailment that exists in Belize, there is plants or plants that address it brilliantly.
True, and that's true all over the world. There is an ailment, there is a plant that will treat it. That's the way nature and homeostasis or balance within the planet works. It's just nature's giving gift to humanity. That we are delicate with our little skin covering our body. We are prone to insects. We're prone to sickness, and nature has provided those cures for us.
Now, would that be true in Chicago?
I think, oh yes, actually as an alternative practitioner, if I go to visit somebody and they complain of a problem, ask, do I know what's good for it? The first thing I do is go to their backyard. Usually their remedy is in the backyard in some wild form, whether it be dandelion or plantain or wild or the Mexican Sea. So I would say that's true even in Chicago and even in New York, as long as you have a piece of land somewhere outside your doorstep, no matter how small.
Amazing, amazing. Rosita, let's remind the listeners who want to go deeper into your work where they can follow up with you. You have two websites. One is Rosita Arvigo. That's RositaArvigo.com. And the other one is Arvigo Therapy, Arvigo Therapy.com. And we've been talking with Dr. Rosita Arvigo, and I think it's clear we could talk all day and all week and all month, and we wouldn't really scratch the surface. But we got a good overview of her work and the kinds of things that she's done and the kinds of things that she's focusing on. And I do encourage everyone who has an interest in health and healing and plants to look into this. As we touched on at the very end of the call, the miracle of plants is not limited to the rainforest. It's not limited to the jungle. These plants, this wisdom in plants is everywhere, and it's there for us to tap. And it's not something that you learn overnight or in a weekend or a month, but there is something there for all of us. And Dr. Arvigo has initiated a lot of things that are well worth copying. For instance, the healing plant preserve idea, the idea of bringing healers together in a conference setting, herb camp, where kids can come and get exposed to plants and get excited about the potential in plants. Rosita, thank you so much for taking the time to share your work with us and your marvelous books. I love them. I'm always happy when a new one comes out.
Thank you, Ken. It was a pleasure. And cheerio, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Okay, great. And Rosita, if you could just hang on after the call, I'll be right there.
Surely. Thank you.